MetaGami, the intuitive solution, is going to be the subject of this discussion. Specifically, we're going to talk about the value that MetaGami brings to the introduction of data across multiple applications. It might be advantageous for you to be aware of another video on our website called MetaGami Introduction, which talks a bit more about MetaGami and its characteristics from a more broad and less specific background. When we talk about MetaGami, it can be described in a range of different ways. A couple that I've chosen for this video are: one, that MetaGami provides all the essential capabilities of a complete Office suite, plus other applications such as Paint, multimedia, and workflow control, and this is the key, all integrated within one application with a consistent interface. The MetaGami introduction video talks about a comparison between MetaGami and this consistent interface integrating all elements within one application compared to Microsoft Office. It is certainly not our intent to replace Microsoft Office, but with MetaGami, you can interact with Microsoft Office products and, in addition, in many cases, fulfill the requirements of your solution with MetaGami better than would be the case in Microsoft Office. Another way to describe MetaGami is that MetaGami allows users to manage data of any type, including full database capabilities, without ever knowing there is such a thing as a database, let alone how to use one. Pretty powerful capabilities, given the fact that typically databases are technically demanding to create, difficult if not impossible to modify, and very focused on static, transaction, non-changing kinds of data, whereas so many users actually operate with dynamic, ad hoc data that is used for analysis, which doesn't conform well to a static structure such as is typical in other databases. There are many ways to describe and show the benefits of integration. Very many markets have the same kinds of needs. MetaGami has been used in nonprofit environments. It's been used in large aerospace and defense environments, many other environments where integration of data was necessary and where MetaGami offered great advantage. But let's talk about, in this case, a small business example. It's not uncommon in a small business to have data about prospects, data stored elsewhere about customers, employee information, and time tracking information, just to mention a few. We met with a prospect the other day who actually had 9 separate systems, distinct from one another, not integrating with one another, that operated independently of each other and that performed specific tasks such as these. Another of our clients had 17 different spreadsheets to manage data about volunteers, members, events, those that the organization was responsible for serving, all separate, all requiring separate repetitive data to be entered because data was common to many of them. As you see here, standalone islands of information. Let's take an analog here and look at what happened when the settlers moved west. They initially set up homesteads in beautiful areas far removed from others. They were isolated. They were dependent upon only themselves for food, shelter, protection. Over time, these settlers evolved into villages, towns, communities, where in fact they could rely on one another. From a social perspective, they were more comfortable and more and the benefits were obvious from the social dynamic, the improvements that they got from being able to share experiences with one another. They also guided and helped one another. They taught each other things that perhaps the other didn't know. They helped each other with work that needed to be done. No longer were people reliant only upon themselves. They actually had the opportunity to share experiences and to leverage their own capabilities to help others. And as a consequence, the community benefited enormously. Applications and the data within applications need that same kind of intimacy. Applications need to interact rather than to act independently of one another. Let's go back to the 4 applications that we talked about at the beginning for small businesses. A system to capture prospects, one to capture customers, time tracking, and employee information. The first thing to understand is that prospect information and customer information share much. They share contact information for sure, but there's still other information that customer data entails that's not a part of prospect information. And customer information needs to be prepared to deliver information to a time tracking system, because if you're tracking time within your organization, it needs to be assigned to a particular customer. Similarly, employee names at the very least need to be part of a time tracking system so that quickly, with consistency, the employee whose time is being tracked can be selected. Immediately thereafter, the name of the customer, and then the time that is being dedicated to that customer. These are not independent systems. This is a very simple example, but it shows how prospect information doesn't need to be re-entered when you're using MetaGami in order to create customer information. It merely is used within the body of data that identify and describe customers, just as the customer information, customer name specifically, and employee name is used within a time tracking system. In fact, there are many more systems. I've shown here 7, but I mentioned circumstances recently that we've encountered with 9, 17 completely separate spreadsheets or systems. But in this example, employee information feeds time tracking, as does customer information. Prospect information, as we just discussed, feeds customer information. The time tracked feeds the customer invoice. The product catalog is used many times for tracking time, if you're identifying the particular kind of service, as well as being used in the customer invoice. And then sales analysis and referral analysis derives from the customer invoice. There's a great deal of overlap in all of these systems, and it's foolish for them to operate independently. Yet the kind of environment that exists where word processing and spreadsheets, for example, and databases are separate from one another is limiting to a great extent. MetaGami facilitates the integration of all of these systems, and the best part of it is with MetaGami, individual users can customize what the systems look like at any time, totally dynamically, no restrictions, and they don't need to know anything about database in order to accomplish that. MetaGami, as is pointed out in the MetaGami introduction, is identified by 3 very important cornerstones. It's simple, literally, as discussed in that video, simple enough for an 11-year-old to learn how to use it, never having used it before, and doing so in 30 or 35 minutes. Integration, of course, is the subject we're talking about here, and dynamic. It is so dynamic because no one creates a database structure. That is managed by MetaGami behind the scenes as the integration of the various applications and the development applications happens as naturally. And then, of course, if we want to continue with the analog back to the settlers, there was a trading post, a central focal point where people brought goods, where goods were sold. That was the coordination point to facilitate the interaction of the various individuals and entities. This is an example of a small business application created within MetaGami. This is the main menu, the trading post of the application. You'll see here that information is maintained about employees. Information is maintained about products, contact management information, budgeting, expense reporting, the ability to send outbound emails, client information, invoicing and time tracking, or for retail organizations, point of sale, invoice production, and then the ability to analyze sales by product, by date, by revenue, and referral analysis. Who refers business to you? Who do you want to send thank yous to? Who is the source of the business so that you can do things to encourage more business to come from them? Those kinds of facilities for small businesses all exist in this application set that is delivered within a MetaGami environment, suitable for immediate use. Because it's all integrated, it amps up the benefit that's derived and then offers the facility for customization even by individuals who don't know anything about a database. If you're interested in additional information on MetaGami, on the Small Business Suite, please visit our website at www.metagami.com, or be sure to call if you have any questions, 303-478-9312.